So sorry to cut your conversation short.
That's okay.
But want to get the class going sort of on time as much as we can. So there's a lot of great things to talk about. The first one is to start off with the Hayom Yom. And I've often quoted this idea, but I haven't seen it inside, which is that it's a teaching of the Maggid of Mezrich, heard by the Alter Rebbe when he was in Mezrich for the first time, so around 1765. And it's really like a conversation between Hashem and the higher sfirot, the higher midot of Hashem, in a way, if you could separate Hashem from his qualities, which you can't really, but I guess it's for the point of illustrating the idea. I, Anochi, I have made the earth, and upon it I created man. Anochi, he who is the true I, unknown to and concealed from even the loftiest emanations, clothed the blessed essence through numerous condensations to give rise to emanations and creatures. So Hashem has constricted himself and brought his energy more and more into confinement, so that there's the creation of seraphim, chayot, ophanim, angels, worlds. We were talking on Shabbat about the creation of different angels. So Hashem has different ways that he manifests his energy into the world, and he's kind of condensed himself in all these different ways. I've made this physical world, and upon it I have created Barati man. Man is the end purpose of creation, and Barati is the end purpose, and creation is the end purpose of man. I created as the numerical equivalent of 613. So the whole point of creation is that man should exist, and the whole point of creation is that man, and in man I mean including woman, man and woman should exist in order to do mitzvot. That's the whole point of all of creation, the whole point of the whole, as they say in Yiddish, ganze Meise. It's all so that man should exist, people should exist, and they should do mitzvahs. And then it's quoted in this Sefer HaBahir that the attribute of chesed, if you can imagine the attribute of chesed, kindness, coming in front of Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says to God, Master of the universe, since the days that Avram has been on the earth, I've not had to perform my task because Avram stands and serves in my stead. So Abraham is kind of replacing the work of the quality of chesed in the world. That's how great Abraham's chesed was, that the quality of chesed should come to Hashem and say, since you created Avram, I kind of don't really even have a job, because Abraham's kindness is so awesome. Because Abraham, who is a soul clothed in a body, he occupies himself with hospitality to strangers as a means of disseminating the idea of God in this lowly world. And that's actually on a higher plane and a higher level than even the attribute of kindness that's coming all the way from the highest levels of Atzilut. So if you think about the tree of life and you think about all those different cute circles on the Tiferet movement logo, the attribute of chesed coming from the highest levels of Atzilut, Avraham was higher even than that. And he was complaining. He says, Avram's service is so awesome that the chesed, the attribute of chesed is kind of redundant. So I was always looking for that quote, and I've mentioned it and referred to it many times, but that's how awesome Avraham was and how awesome his kindness was, that he should even replace the very essence of kindness that is one of Hashem's, 10 aspects of his own being. It's kind of hard to make sense of exactly like what is Hashem, what are the sfirot, how does it all break down? can the Sphirot talk? It's a metaphor, I guess, on some level. How literally do we take it? I'm not sure exactly. But the idea is that it's this teaching that Avram so identified and so exemplified the quality of chesed that he even put the actual essential quality of chesed that existed in the world almost not to shame, but made it redundant while Avram was existing in the world. So hold on to that thought. I'm just going to get some water because when I talk, my mouth gets very dry.
Bracha, you have that glow still.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah, I can experience here.
Hi, Susan.
Hey, Linda, did you recover from all your travels
Yes, I did.
and enjoying your bed?
Oh, very much. Very, very much.
Right.
How
So
are you doing?
I have my water here.
Jug of water.
Gives me the opportunity to make this bracha that God creates every single thing that exists in the world and continues to create everything that exists in the world. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh bidvaro.
Amen.
David Varro. Amen.
Hey, Kova.
So now we're coming into the Parsha, and the Parsha is very exciting, and there's lots of parts that we can look at it inside and try and move through it and look at it inside. So I'm going to share the screen, and we're going to read, and it starts off and it says, the life of Sarah. Now, the whole parsha is called Chaya Sara, which is the life of Sarah, Chaya, the life. And the very opening lines of the parsha tells us that she dies in the second verse. So it says, Vayi Hayu, and it was Chaya Sara, the life of Sarah, Mea Shana, 100 years, for Esrim Shana, and 20 years, for Sheva Shanim, and 7 years, Shnei Chaya Sara. And so the Rashi, if we look at the Rashi on this, it's very beautiful. Rashi, it says, why after each, instead of just saying 127 years, it breaks it down and it says 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. So Rashi says that each of those years, so when she was 100, it was like she was 20 in terms of sin. And when she was 20, she hadn't sinned. Just as at 20 she hadn't sinned, so when she was 100, she was out without any sin. And when she was 20, she was like a 7-year-old, because just as a 7-year-old is completely beautiful and innocent looking, so she was at 20. So each year was kind of distinct, and her years were very well spent in a way. So that's a very nice Rashi. So basing off that Rashi, evening. So basing off that Rashi of 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, this idea of living one's life to the full and maximizing time and maximizing our years. So there's a little essay from Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, and it's an essay in his book, which I've referred to before. It's these Judaism life-changing ideas, which isn't showing up so well, but one idea per parsha. And the idea of this parsha is basically the idea that Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wants to bring out is, how do we live life to the fullest, and how can our days be maximized? And he talks about the fact that there in 2017, the world's oldest man passed away, just short of his 114th birthday. Hi, Oksana, welcome. So just short of his 114th birthday, passed away. And he talks about him. His name was Israel Crystal. And he said, you probably think he lived to 114, that he had an easy life and that he didn't have a lot of suffering and that he didn't have so many struggles. And he says, actually, the exact opposite is true. He was born in Poland in 1903, suffered 4 years in the Lodz ghetto, transported to Auschwitz. His 2 children died in Auschwitz. His wife was killed. When he was liberated, he was only 37 kilos and he had terrible suffering. But then he survived the war and he married again. He moved to Eretz Israel and he had a whole new life and created a confectionery business and invented a lot of things. And then Rabbi Sachs talks about many Holocaust survivors that he interviewed, and many of them had very positive attitudes to life, very life affirming. So he also talks about, even though this is about, it starts off talking about the death of Sarah, but in the Parsha it also speaks about Abraham's life, and it says he breathed his last and died in good old age, old and satisfied. And he says Avraham Avinu's death was the most serene in the Torah. And so you could think about Avraham too, that he had a very easy life without a lot of struggles and suffering. He died, very serene death, but we all know that that's not true, right? Avraham had many, many struggles. So his point in referring, and then he talks about the Holocaust survivors who lived well, but they didn't look backwards, they looked forwards. And that was in a way what enabled them to establish their futures and restart their lives, was that aspect of looking forwards. Even, he says, many of them didn't talk about the Holocaust until their lives were well established. And so he's talking about this idea of looking forward and being life affirming. And that's something about counting our time and living life well and being positive and optimistic in a way. So 127 years. So at 100 as free of sin as 20, and at 20 as beautiful as 7. And so, Sarah certainly aged well. So then we get the next part, that Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Avram came to eulogize her. And there's a connection here between his love for Sarah and purchasing land in Eretz Israel. And this is going to be the first purchase of land that exists. From here, we see Avraham Avinu paid 400 pieces of silver. He bought Kiryat Arba, Ma'arat HaMachpelah from Ephron, and there's a whole negotiation, and Ephron, there's like a back and a forth and a back and the forth, but at the end of it all, Abraham pays Ephron 400 pieces of silver, and this is an official acquisition of the land of Israel. Cannot be debated by anyone because it's right there in the text that he bought it, he paid for it, and it's very nice. So let's just go right at the end there.
Quick question.
Yes.
About geography.
Yeah.
I know when I was there, I visited a place in what's the name of that place? It's like it's actually really close to Eshkelon. This beautiful park in Eshkelon, the Cliff Park, I think they call it, and it was just ruins after ruins after ruins, and there were Canaanite ruins. So did the Canaanite kingdom stretch all the way from south, that part of of Israel all the way up to Hebron? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know that there were Canaanites in Canaan, and when the Yidden came in, eventually they had to acquire the land from the Canaanites. And I know that
Yeah.
in the Chumash and here with Abraham, and then throughout, there's little parts where we actually buy and acquire certain parts. But I don't want to answer that question because I don't have the map in front of me and I don't see clearly exactly. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
don't want to answer because I feel like I might answer incorrectly. So coming into the second paragraph, the second chapter here. So here it is that in front of all of the sons of Chet, in the presence of all, Abram buries his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, which is in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Now, I've mentioned before in previous classes that this Shabbos in Eretz Israel is going to be a huge Shabbos because people from all around the world come to, and all around Eretz Israel, come to Hebron to celebrate this Parsha and to daven at the Kever. Now, this piece of land that Avram bought, it actually contains a huge cave. And if you go to Hebron, you don't see a cave. You see like a big, huge square building. And in that big, huge square building are buried Adam and Chava, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah, and they each there's like different rooms. There's the room of Yitzchak, then there's, you see the burial place of Avram. There's like all different compartments in this huge big construction of it's an awesome thing. I told a story about Hebron and about Ma'arat HaMachpelah and Chaya Sara at the Malava Malka this past Shabbos. And I don't know who heard the story, but I'm going to tell it again now. That I know a woman very well who had a dream. And she dreamt, she's a very spiritual lady, and she dreamt that people were trying to come to Hebron to celebrate and to be in Hebron for this Parsha of Chaya Sara. And in her dream, she saw that people didn't have places to stay where they could be hosted for this incredible Shabbos, which is amazing because in the Bible, Avram bought Ma'arat HaMachpelah, and we know where it is, and we know where Hebron is, and people can actually go and daven at the cave, at the burial place of Sarah and Avram. So people want to be there. So she had a dream that people couldn't find accommodation in Hebron. So in her dream, somehow manifested in the dream a huge tent with chandeliers in the tent and huge amount of tables set with real crockery, real plates, flowers on the table, chandeliers in the tent, and magnificent amount of food. And everybody could come to Hebron and just be hosted by the people of Hebron and could have Friday night dinner and Shabbos lunch in Hebron for the Shabbos. And she woke up, and she's a very special lady, a very holy lady, and she found a sponsor and she made it happen that she got someone to pay for a huge tent in Hebron with chandeliers hanging from the tent, real flowers on the table, real crockery on the table, real silver. And so it is today, or it was until COVID, 5,000 people come to that tent and have meals and everything free. And
That's a big tent.
it's a big tent. And I don't know what the story is right now with COVID and last year, but my son, Yosef, is just about to turn 18. So when he was right before turning 13, he and I went on a trip to Eretz Israel, and we went to Hebron on this Shabbos, and I was in the tent, and I called my friend and I said, I'm in the tent. I see the chandeliers, I see
Wow.
I see the flowers, I
Wow.
see everything. And it's an incredible thing. She got this kind of like prophetic message and she made it happen, and it happened for many years. So I'm not sure what this, I think though that it's probably going to happen, because I know during Sukkot, when there was Simchas Be'Shoeva, there were many people who went to Hebron and were dancing in Hebron. So maybe they'll have the tent as well. So it's a big thing. Sarah buried in Hebron in the Marat HaMachpelah. We acquired it with 400 pieces of silver. Okay. Then we're coming into the next part, chapter 2. And it says, Abraham, this first verse, and it says, Abraham Zakein, he was old. Baba Yamim, he was advanced in his years. Vahaya Beirach et Abraham Bakol. And it says, Hashem blessed him with everything. And Rashi says, what does it mean, everything? It means his son. This son that was for him this everything. Now, for a few years, I've taught Pasha, and I haven't discussed the Akedah, because it's one of my friends taught last week the Akedah, and she said to her class, like, what do you make of this? It's a crazy story. God asks Avram to sacrifice everything he believes in and everything he stands for. And, how hard is that? It's even hard to understand. But Abraham tried so hard to have a child. He and Sarah hadn't had a child for so long. And then Hagar has Yishmael, and Hashem says, no, Hagar, Yishmael is not going to be the child that I want you to have. I want you to have another son from Sarah. And then Yitzchak is born, and Yitzchak is, I think he's close to 37. And then Hashem says to him, I want you to sacrifice your son, Yitzchak. And Avram doesn't question Hashem. He just says, if this is what you want, this is what I'm going to do. And we know that he had his hand up and he was just about to, do whatever you do if you're making a sacrifice. And the angel comes and says, stop. God just wanted to see that you would follow his instructions. So Yitzchak isn't sacrificed. And now Abraham has everything he wants, and he has this son, and he feels like it's time that the son should get married. So now a lot of this parsha is going to be all about how Abraham sends his servant Eliezer to be a messenger and to try and find a girl for this son Yitzchak. Now, the whole point of the story is not just to find a son, not just to find a shidduch for the one and only son of Abraham and Sarah, but is to find a shidduch who's going to represent the values of Abraham. And we started the Hayom Yom. And what did we say about Abraham? What is his quintessential value? What does he stand for? Stands for it in such a fundamental way that he almost put one of the Sfirot out of a job. What is the quintessential essence of Abraham?
Chesed.
Chesed, kindness, giving, and in such a selfless and open-hearted way. So that's one aspect, that whoever is going to be a shidduch for this family, for the son of Abraham, has to have this quality of chesed. And it's very important that they have continuation, because Abraham's whole mission in the world is to create a legion, a family, a team, a mission of bringing God's light into the world. It can't end, has to continue. So Abraham is going to send Eliezer as his messenger. Now, it's really interesting because on Shabbos, we started talking on Shabbos afternoon, this past Shabbos, some of you were there. We were talking about the seeds of Moshiach and the idea of elevating the sparks, and how sometimes holy sparks get dispersed. And the Kabbalistic background to that is that Hashem, and I'm going to use very different language right now because I've said it the other way so many times, and now I feel like saying it this way, maybe just to change it around a little bit. But when Hashem was creating the world, he took kind of godly energy, not quite fairy dust, but he gathered it in his hand and he tried to make a world. And the world, I actually learned the first 2 tries that Hashem tried to formulate the world, both didn't work, to teach us that even God can make mistakes, and he had to try 3 times. But in those first 2 tries, whatever substance, this angel dust or whatever that Hashem used, that's just a metaphor, but it kind of didn't manifest into the creation the way we wanted it, the way he wanted it, and sparks, holy sparks kind of fell into the world. And they fell in many disparate parts. And now part of our job, that's one of the explanations. Another explanation is God created the world slightly incomplete, and we have to go complete it. But this idea of sparks being scattered through creation is an idea from the Arizal, and that part of our job is to look for these fallen sparks and redeem them and release them. So Eliezer is also a spark. A spark. Who was Eliezer? Eliezer was the son of Nimrod, who was the son of Cush, who was the eldest son of Ham. Who was Ham? When they came out of the Teva, the ark, Noah had 3 sons. Ham was one, Shem was another, Shem, Ham, and Yafes. And we say that Shem, he's the Holy One. In a way, there was a yeshiva of Shem and Ava, Shem and his son Ava. Yafes is the idea of beauty, and the descendants of Greece come from Yafes. And Ham did some not such nice things, and he was cursed. And so in this nation from Ham, then there's Cush, then there's Nimrod, and then there's Eliezer from this cursed nation. But he links up with Abraham, and he's, in a way, he's a spark that gets redeemed. He gets transformed. And through living and serving in Abraham's court, so he becomes blessed by God. And we know Hagar was a daughter of Pharaoh, and she gets absorbed into Abraham's house. And so there's a shifting over there. And this idea of elevating of the sparks. So Eliezer is Abraham's servant, and his job is to try and make sure that Abraham's message stays vibrant and alive in the world. And I've got an interesting pasuk written down in my notes, which is Dole u masker mitorat rabo. What is Eliezer's task? The drawing and giving to drink from the waters of the Torah of his master. And also he's the concept of the Deli, drawing the waters of spirituality into the world for all to drink. So remember, I've said many, many, many times that anytime there's water and a well, there's Torah and there's wisdom. And now the whole story of Eliezer looking for a shidduch for his master's son, Eliezer is on a mission by Abraham to find a shidduch for Yitzchak. It's going to center around this water idea. And the idea is he's not just looking for a shidduch for Yitzchak, he's looking for someone who can continue this path of drawing the waters of spirituality into the world for all to drink. That's what the Jews do. That's what they're supposed to do. And Abraham dug wells, and Yitzchak dug wells, and now Eliezer, let's see what he does and what happens. So he says, Abraham asks Eliezer to swear, and he says, please don't take a wife from the daughters of the Canaanites. That's where Abraham was living. Go back to my birthplace, take a wife from there. And the servant says, maybe she won't want to come with me. And then Abraham says, well, the main thing is my son shouldn't go there, because that's not a good place for him. He needs to stay here, but if she doesn't want to come, so then she doesn't want to come. And it's cute here. We were talking about angels. Hashem, Avram says to Eliezer, an angel will actually go with you and assist you. He says, don't worry, Hashem will send his angel before you, and you'll be successful. You're going to find the right girl. And then Eliezer swears, and the way of swearing is that he puts his hand under Avram's thigh. So that's a method of swearing. And let's continue to the 3rd chapter. Now we see that Eliezer doesn't travel penniless. He takes 10 of his master's camels, and Avram signs over all of his wealth to Eliezer. So Eliezer is looking like he's got all the wealth of his master, and he's going to be making a very compelling case for finding a good shidduch. And then he says, and then there's this beautiful prayer. So he takes all his wealth, and the camels crouch outside the city. Now look at this beautiful prayer. I want to read it to you. Yud Beis 12, Pasuk 12. He says, Vayome Hashem Elohei Adonai Avraham, the God of my master Abraham, Hakra na, make it happen, please. Lifnei hayom, before today, Asay chesed im Adonai Avraham. Do a kindness for my master. And what's the kindness? Hashem, help to make events happen to enable the kindness of Abraham to be handed down to future generations. Not just help me find a good girl, but help me find a girl that this incredible quality of chesed, of kindness, that exemplifies, describes who Abraham is. Help me find another girl who can help that continue into the world. I've never really looked at his prayer in that way before, but I thought that was very beautiful. And not only that, but Abraham is the one, and we remember that he had a bris, and he had a bris in his physical body, and a bris in his physical body is bringing God into the physical world, because God commanded Abraham to do a mitzvah with his physical body. That's why Eliezer puts his hand, it's a little gross for us, I guess, I hate to say it, but it is, under his thigh, because it's near a mitzvah, near the bris. But this idea that God can make things happen in our physical world, it's not just God in the heavens, God, abstract up there with the angels. Eliezer is saying, make it happen at this well. Make it happen that the girl comes, the girl, talks to me. Affect events right here in our physical world, because that's who you are, God. You're not just God of the heavens, but you're God of the earth as well. And I really like that prayer. So he says, God of my master, please cause to happen, hakra na. Now, it's reminding me that we have a mitzvah to fight Amalek. Amalek is this horrible nation from whom Haman is a descendant. Haman is the person that we defeated later on with Mordechai in Persia. But what?
Again.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just thinking we have to do it again.
Yeah, we have to. Well,
So much so.
yes. So what is Amalek? Amalek is not just Purim, and it's not just Haman. It's an energy that makes us doubt God. And the same way that Eliezer says, make it happen to me that, you do this kindness to Abraham. Amalek says things just happen. When we remember Amalek, we say Amalek just happened, just bumped into us on the road. When we remember, when we read in the verses, there's a special mitzvah before Purim to read, remember what Amalek did to you when he happened upon you on the way. What do you mean he happened upon you on the way? Nothing just happens upon you on the way. That's the whole point of Amalek, to make you think things just happen. And here Eliezer is saying, make it happen. Everything that happens is from God. He should make it happen. So what does he make happen? So I'll be standing by the water fountain, by the well, and people will be coming out to get water. And please, God, make it that the girl comes. And not only does she come, but she comes with kindness. Linda, can you read the verses on the screen? Can you read
so.
verse 14?
In English?
Yeah.
Okay. And it will be that the maiden to whom I will say, lower your pitcher and I will drink. And she will say, drink, and I will also water your camels. Her have you designated for your servant, for Isaac, and through her may I know that you have performed loving kindness with my master.
So thank you very much, very well read. So he totally creates the vision. He articulates what he wants to happen. We heard about positive visualizations and make a vessel and have it, imagine what you want to manifest and make it very clear and specific. And Eliezer makes a very clear definition of what he wants to happen. Didn't happen yet. He's still asking Hashem, make it happen, that it should happen. Okay, Linda, read the next one, 15.
Now he had not yet finished speaking, and behold, Rebekah came out, who had been born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, and her pitcher was on her shoulder.
So God made a beautiful thing. He hadn't even finished speaking. And right away, Rivka comes. And not only does she's not just a beautiful girl, but she's from Avram's family. She's Bethuel. She's born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Avram's brother. So she's literally Avram's niece. So the Torah shows us, Eliezer is a hidden spark, son of Nimrod, who's been elevated. And I'll talk more about the hidden sparks and Moshiach in a few minutes. B, he articulates a very clear prayer with lots of detail. And C, Hashem makes it happen. He hasn't even finished speaking and Rivka is already there. Now, Rivka is very attractive. She's a virgin. It repeats, no man had been intimate with her. She went down to the fountain, she filled her pitcher and she's going now. It says, Rashi tells us that when she went to the waters miraculously raised up to meet her. So Eliezer knew right away she's a pretty special girl, but he doesn't really know yet who she is, but he knows that the waters rised up. And Rashi tells us that not only was she a virgin, but no man had been intimate with her at all. Now, it was a time of a lot of abuse and many women were violated in all kinds of ways. So she's quite exceptional for those times and that place that she was really untouched. And the servant runs to her and he says, please let me get a little water. And then, Susan, do you want to read 18 and 19?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, anybody else want to read 18 or 19? I know you're on a silent, but you can unsilent if any, or we can just ask Linda again. Anyone else? Okay, Linda, you go, 18 and 19.
And she said, drink, my lord. And she hastened and lowered her pitcher to her hand, and she gave him to drink.
And carry on.
And she finished giving him to drink, and she said, I will also draw for your camels until they will have finished drinking.
Okay, now that's a lot of water.
A lot of water.
That's 10 camels, and they've walked from Abraham's place all the way to where they are now. And that's a lot of water. And obviously this shows how holy and how kind she was, that she didn't only give him to drink, but she kept on giving out all of this water all the way. So she's got this expansive quality of chesed, and gimilot chasadim, acts of loving kindness, has similar letters to gamalim, gimilot chasadim and gamalim. So that's interesting. So in this parsha, we have Sarah going down to the kever, the grave, and then the newly found family member is Rivka, which actually has the same letters as kever. And then Rivka kind of replacing Sarah as the new woman matriarch of the family, in a way giving rise to a new boker, a new day, a new morning, because boker and is same letters again, the base, the kuf, and the resh. So we've got kever, Rivka, and boker, the grave, Sarah, and the new dawning. So I just want to speak a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of, and then Eliezer gives her gifts, and there's a whole story of getting the gifts. And I just want to say, read one more little piece, that she agrees to go with Eliezer, and they go, there's a whole lot of things. He gives her gifts, and a lot of, they make a decision that she will go back with Eliezer. And I just want to read this last part to you. He tells the whole story of what happened. And I just want to tell you what happens when she goes back with Eliezer. And sorry, I'm just looking for the place.
That's okay. You know, I wish somewhere there was a biblical family tree.
There is many
Really?
of the Chumashim, there is a family tree. Yeah.
I also recommend the Living Torah, which is a very easy English, no, thou, that, a very easily written the stories of the Parsha. The Living Torah by R.A. Kaplan.
But in the some of the Chumashim, I don't know if it's in the art scroll, but they have the family tree. I just wanted you to see this part. When she goes back, she agrees, this Rivka, there's a big negotiation with her brother and her father, and she agrees to go back with Eliezer. And this is what I was talking about also, that when she's going back with Eliezer, what does she do? She lifts her eyes and she sees Yitzchak, and then she comes down. Some people say she falls down from the camel. So what is this? What is Yitzchak doing, and what does she see? And this is a beautiful moment where it says that Yitzchak was meditating in the fields. V'yetze Yitzchak lesoach b'sadeh. He was lesoach b'sadeh lifnot erev v'yisa enah. And she lifts up her eyes, v'yar, and she sees, and hine gemalim ba'im, and he lifts up his eyes, and he sees the camels coming. So just to go back, we've spoken about this before, about the different prayer services and how each of our forefathers brings in a different prayer service. And it's also that each of our forefathers is connected to a different space of prayer. So for Yitzchak, it's the field. For Abraham, he took Yitzchak up the mountain to do the Akedah. It was a mountain. And Yaakov, he's connected to the idea of a house. And I'm not actually sure why. Does anybody know why Yaakov is connected to the house, to a house? Because he doesn't actually build a Beis HaMikdash. We don't see him in a house. I'm not sure why it's connected to a house. It's just slipped my mind right now. But Abraham is Shachris, and it says he got up early in the morning to go see the destruction of Sodom. So he got up early to take his son and go on the journey of going up to Mount Moriah to do the Kedah, but he also gets up early. I guess he's an early riser, Abraham, because he also got up early to see what had happened to Sodom. And the word used is Amad, that is Amad, he was standing in prayer, and that's connected to him. Yitzchak is this mincha in the afternoon time, lesuach, this meditating, and Yaakov is this idea of evening, the yifga b'makom, that he came to this, he arrived at this place, he happened to come to this place, he arrived at this place and realized it was dark, and then we have him connected to Ma'ariv. So I just want to say a few words about this thing of elevating sparks, and then we'll finish. And connected to what we were speaking about last week about Sodom, and where is Moshiach? Moshiach is hiding in Sodom. And we spoke, and it was a little bit, the last time we spoke about this, it was a little bit kind of a difficult topic about Lot and his daughters and the incestuous relationship between Lot and his daughters. And from that, them thinking that there was no one else in the world anymore, that no one else in the world anymore, that they felt propelled to have relations with their father. And from one of those unions, we get the nation of Moab, from my father. And then later on in Jewish stories, we know that when the 12 sons of Yaakov, after they threw their brother Yosef into a pit, there was a lot of bad family dynamics, and Yehuda felt kind of particularly responsible for not protecting his brother, or whatever he felt, maybe instigating that his brother should be sold. But we know that Yehuda leaves the family, and and we'll look at it a little later in the story. He leaves the family, and he goes and he moves away from everybody, and he starts doing business away from the family. And he has 3 sons, and the eldest marries Tamar, this lady Tamar, and he dies. And then Yehuda lets Tamar marry the second eldest son, and the second eldest son dies. And then Yehuda doesn't want to give the third son to Tamar because she thinks maybe Tamar is cursed, or she's a witch, or she has, bad energy. So he withholds, and he says to her, my youngest son is not old enough to get married yet. But according to Jewish law, she's married into that family. She should get pregnant by someone from that family because she married into that family. So Yehuda keeps not, arranging a shidduch for her with with his youngest son. And eventually she takes matters into her own hands, and she gets dressed as a harlot. And Yehuda's wife has passed away, the father of all these boys. And she knows that he's going to go down to, there's a fair or a agricultural fair or some kind of marketplace that he goes every month or every 6 months or whatever. And she stands on some kind of street corner, and he approaches her thinking she's a prostitute, and she gets pregnant from her father-in-law. And so she's pregnant from the family that she knew she had to be pregnant from. And from her pregnancy is another piece in the puzzle of Moshiach, because she has twins. She has twins, Peretz, and I've forgotten the name of the other son, who also part of the story of Moshiach. And then later we know that Ruth, Ruth is the story of Ruth, when she comes back to Eretz Yisrael, she ends up getting pregnant because I don't know if I should say the whole story, but I'll just try and make it as brief as possible. There's a Jewish family in Israel, very prestigious family. They leave Israel because of a famine. They go to Moab to get where people won't be bothering them for donations and help and chesed. And their two sons meet two girls, Osnat and Ruth. And Osnat the two boys pass away, the husband passes away. There's just Naomi and her two daughters-in-law, and she says to the daughters-in-law, you can leave, but Ruth stays with Naomi, and they come back to Israel. And at a certain point, in order to provide for her mother-in-law and for herself, Ruth goes to glean in the fields of Boaz, who's a member of their family, and under the guidance of Naomi, she approaches Boaz at night when he's sleeping, or not sleeping, he's harvesting all his produce, and he's sleeping outdoors next to his field, and he's also an older guy, and he's not married anymore. And Ruth goes and sits at his feet and basically suggests to him that he should fulfill his family obligations and give her a child from the family. And he says, well, maybe there's another member of the family who, would be a better candidate. And he says, I'll talk to, maybe there's a relative younger, more suitable. And he speaks to all the members of the family, and no one really wants to take this on, this girl who's a convert from Moab. And Ruth and her get married. Boaz and Ruth get married, and that's how she has her child, who's the grandfather of David HaMelech. What do all these three stories have in common? All these three stories have in common women doing very unusual things, women taking huge risks, women risking their reputation, women kind of lowering themselves, women almost humbling themselves to do very unusual things because they feel like they need to do things to preserve either the human race or to have a baby from a specific family. And they're all very selfless, but they're all very brave, and they're all very committed to their mission. Tamar goes and dresses up as a prostitute so she can be with Yehuda. The daughters of Lot, who knows what they were thinking, but they felt they needed to do this. And Ruth definitely, she followed what Naomi said, and she was with Boaz because that was what needed to be done. She needed to be pregnant from this family. And it just hit me today that from all of these women, this is the spirit of Moshiach. This is the Nakuda, the spark of Moshiach, taking risks, not thinking of your own reputation, going beyond yourself, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing what is right, and being very bold and very strong in that commitment to the mission. And it's interesting because all of these women did very unusual things, and they all did it for the sake of pregnancy, bringing down this continuation of this family mission energy that has to come through from Abraham and Sarah to Yitzchak, to Abraham's family. Then there's his nephew in Lot. There's this little buried part, but the daughters feel like there's something, compelling them. And then none of them are wimpy, and none of them do it for honor. All of them are taking enormous risks. I just thought it was interesting to contemplate that they all connected to Moshiach, and maybe in some way we can be empowered by them being selfless, being so committed. And even though it seems like very bizarre, they all were holy women, listening to divine guidance, that even though what they were doing would look very bad, they were playing their role, doing something very, necessary in some way. And I'll just end with one story. There was somebody who was speaking about Lot and his daughters, and made some deprecating remarks about those daughters, and had a dream, and the daughters came to this person in a dream and said, you don't have any idea who we are. Make sure you don't talk in a bad way about us, because Karina, wait 1 second. Make sure you don't speak badly about us, because you don't understand all the spiritual ramifications of what was going on over there. So anyway, that's the end of my my address, and I would love to hear comments and questions. And I know Karina has to go, so I don't know. I know she's leaving, but in case she has anything to say or a question to ask before she disappears. Otherwise, I'm open to comments and questions from anybody else who has a comment or a question.
Do you remember who had that dream?
Well, I don't, but I also know that they were punished for speaking badly and got some.
I've heard that story. I just don't remember who it is.
Yeah, I don't remember who, but I know that that person was punished for speaking about Lot's daughters in not a respectful way. So it's a very deep story. We don't really understand it, but we definitely don't want to say bad things about it. Yeah. Any other comments or questions or responses?
Bracha, I have a quick question. How, like you were mentioning that these women knew that they have to get pregnant from this family. Like, what does that mean?
Okay, so in Torah law, in Jewish law, when a woman married into a family, if her husband passed away and she hadn't had children from her husband, the family in a way owed her to offer her a brother of the family that she could marry, so she could still be in the family and still have a descendant for the family. So with Yehuda, he had 3 sons. So she married the first one, he died. So then she married the second one, he died. She still hadn't gotten pregnant. She married into that family. It was kind of like within that family, somehow she should be given land. Her material needs should be taken care of, and she should be given an opportunity to get pregnant. It's a whole thing that you don't just marry the man, you sort of marry into the family. So when Ruth came back with Naomi to Israel and she approaches Boaz, she's not just saying to Boaz, marry me, she's also saying, take care of me and Naomi, you're a family member, redeem us, taking care of us, take on supporting us. We from this family and you're a relative of this family.
What if was a young woman who did have 1 or 2 or some young children?
If she had children, then I don't think this applies. Then they don't have to provide her with a husband. But as the family, I guess there was still with Ruth, there was the whole thing also of redeeming the fields, that it was connected to land as well. So I guess if she had children, then she wouldn't have to marry for the terms of having children, but they might still need to provide if her husband has left her and it's part of that family, then I think it makes sense that they would have to take care of her in some way of her physical needs. But if she had children from that family, then they wouldn't have to arrange that part.
Okay. One other question I have, another history question.
Sure.
So Abraham bought the cave of the patriarchs and to bury everybody there. But you said Adam and Chava, is it?
Yeah.
Were already buried there?
Yes.
So how did he know? He knew that they were there, and that's why he wanted to.
There's a beautiful medrash that when the angels came for dinner and he was giving them, tongue and mustard and everything, that he was going to one of his sheep or one of his animals ran and he was chasing it. And he ran and he ran and he ran and he was trying to chase it and ran into the entrance to that cave. And he sort of discovered the cave. And if he was on the level of who we know he was, seeing angels and things, we know that in later times, holy people would be able to walk through the land of Israel and identify graves of departed people and say, this is so-and-so's grave, this is so-and-so's grave. So I'm assuming that when he, thank you, Susan, when this animal ran and he saw the entrance to the cave, he would know that that was perhaps where Adam and Chava were buried, and that's why he wanted to buy that cave.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So he
Any
knew.
other questions? Any other comments? Yes, Suri. You'll have to unmute yourself because I don't, yeah, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I unmuted.
Now I hear.
So that you said that you noticed that the women that were doing these things that were a little bit not on the straight path, or however, sort of like they're the ones that the lineage ends up bringing Moshiach, right? That
Well, I
with
said,
Rus and Boaz, right? So it's an interesting thing, right? Because you would think that like you would get pure, like you would want someone who is pure or comes from a better lineage than someone who accidentally, slept with their niece or slept with their fathers. That things that seem like a little bit not so. So I don't really know what exactly to say, but it like hit me just the same way it hit you, that the way it's sort of like hidden, it's like kedusha, like purity, hidden in this
unexpected places.
arena where it's not so pure. It looks like sort of like not so pure. So the same way it's hidden now, that it's really the times of Mashiach, and it's slowly coming. And it's hidden now. It doesn't look so pure. It looks like pretty sad. There's like all these awful things going on, but this is the way I felt about it. Just, we don't know. You think, okay, Mashiach's coming. I always think about it. It's like the state of Israel had to be created because we all have to go back to Eretz Yisrael for Mashiach. Now it's a secular state, and it's not really considered, like anyway, maybe I'm not really making sense.
I think I hear your question, and I think that it's
not really a question. No, it's more of a point that the way you pointed it out, that they're the ones who are bringing Mashiach. So also that Mashiach doesn't come in such a purely clear, beautiful way. There's
it's a twist and a turn, and
right.
a twist and a turn, and a hidden and a roundabout,
right.
and an upside down, and there's
right.
fear of tricking the Satan, that to bring the light of Mashiach, you have to kind of go in roundabout ways to
right.
to hide the light so that the Satan doesn't, see it overtly, and you bring it in through the back door and you slip it in under the mat and you,
right.
So it's a very deep ideas, and I can't really pretend to understand them completely, but there does seem to be that aspect to it. And you're right, in Eretz Yisrael now, there's a lot of hiddenness in the world. It seems on the surface that Israel it's not run by people who so, sensitive
right.
to this and that. But yes, it is a mysterious thing. And it can also teach us not to be very careful about how we're judging, because we don't know from where the light is going to come. We don't know. We don't really know.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, can I just ask you, maybe this is like a little bit off the topic, but there's Mashiach ben David, and then there's Mashiach ben
Yosef.
Yeah.
So Moshiach
Could
ben
you
Yosef,
explain that in a simple way?
yeah, Moshiach ben Yosef, there's two different procedures that are kind of going to create the environment that's going to lead to Moshiach. Moshiach ben Yosef is a sort of support persona who's going to help in the process, but is not, I don't think, I think it's part of the process. And there's Moshiach ben David. Moshiach ben David is going to be, I guess, the one that has Malchus, leadership in a different way. But Moshiach ben Yosef is another persona who's going to assist in transforming, in bringing this transformation to bear. So there's two different chapters or two different personas that can play different roles in readying Israel, readying Jewish people, readying the world for Moshiach.
So Mashiach ben David is clearly the person who is Mashiach, and Mashiach ben Yosef is, I don't want to say hidden because it's, but a little bit like in the not in the forefront. He's not David. He's not Mashiach ben David like the king of.
That's the way that I understand it, but I haven't learned so much about Moshiach ben Yosef. That's the way I've always understood it, that it's like a preparatory preparation stage, and then the next stage.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. So thank you for your questions, and I hope you enjoyed the class, and I wish you a beautiful week, and living with Sarah and Abraham and Yitzhak, holy people. We should be inspired, live our days well, that they could say by us after 127 years that each day, each year was lived to the full. And I like that idea, as beautiful at 20 as 7 and as free as sin at 100 as 20. So we should be beautiful and sin-free and live our lives well every day till 120. Okay.
Agreed.
All right.
Amen.
Thank you.
L'chaim. All the
Good
best
night.
for the week.
I
Okay.
thank you so much, Bracha. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
Thank
providing
you.
Thank you.
questions and everything too. Yeah, thank you.